especially on a Saturday. We truly appreciate your presence. I would like to welcome our distinguished speaker, Dr. Ali Al-Houri, who will discuss a very timely topic in the field of education. In today's session, he will walk us through different applications of evaluating and assessing English writing, and together we will gain valuable insights about assessing English writing. This topic is of great significance to us educators and especially to those who teach English as a second or as a foreign language. So allow me to briefly introduce our speaker. Dr. Ali Al-Houri is an associate professor of English. I'm not sure if the slide is there. Yes. So Al-Houri is an associate professor of English. He holds a master's degree from the University of Nottingham in applied linguistics and data analysis, and a PhD in English language from the University of Nottingham. He published more than 40 peer-reviewed papers, 6 books, and 50 international conference papers. Dr. Ali is also a member of the editorial board of more than 10 international journals and has reviewed over 200 research papers. He received several international awards, including the Promising Researcher Award, the Best Research Award, and the Best Book Award. He was also elected as a member of the Board of Directors of the Saudi Linguistic Society at King Saud University and the Board of Directors of the Saudi English Language Teaching, also known as Saudi TESOL, at King Abdulaziz University. I would like to also congratulate Dr. Ali on his recent achievement as he obtained a patent from the Saudi Authority for Intellectual Property for a very interesting device he created to help language learners lower their anxiety levels while listening. He also obtained or gained a golden medal for a device he created to help blind people write correctly. Congratulations, Dr. Ali. I think we need to dedicate another session for you to tell us about these interesting devices. And last but not least, he was listed among the top 2% scientists in the world, according to Stanford University's ranking. Dr. Ali, thank you for accepting our invitation. We are both honored and excited to have you with us today. And before we start, I would like to remind our audience that we will dedicate the last couple of minutes to answer all your questions. So if you have any question, please feel free to type it in the Q&A section, as unfortunately the chat option is not available for today. So if you have comments, questions, please feel free to write them and type them in the Q&A section. So Dr. Ali, please go ahead. The floor is yours. You can start when you're ready.
Just to double check, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to give this talk, and I hope that you will find it informative. In this talk, I'm going to talk about writing assessment and different aspects related to writing assessment. And then we will talk about artificial intelligence and its role in enhancing or assisting writing assessment and see some examples of applications. Okay, so assessment fairness. Exams are very high stakes for students. You might be a lecturer now, but if you recall being a student, exams are very high stakes for students. They could incur failure. They could incur lower grades than students deserve and consequently low GPAs. And in some cases, especially for standardized exams, students may be denied visa for visiting or for continuing their education in other countries. And rater variability is related to variation in the characteristics of raters, but not the performance of students, which is not fair. So you have the same performance by the same student, but different raters rate it differently, which is usually a problem. So what is rater variability? So raters may vary because they may, to the degree to which they comply with the scoring rubrics. Some of them may de-emphasize some rubrics, some of them might emphasize certain rubrics. It could be because how they interpret the rubrics. They may decide that they say, okay, I want to follow the rubrics, but they may interpret it slightly differently. They may also differ in the severity or leniency while scoring students. They may differ in the understanding of the response options or categories associated with the scoring rubrics. And they may also vary in their consistency across examinees or criteria or tasks. So all these factors can affect the reliability and the validity of raters. So in one study, the researchers asked raters to explain what aspects they do emphasize on when they mark students. And this marking could be on writing, and it could be on speaking. But in this talk, we are going to focus more on writing rather than speaking, though many of the principles also apply to speaking. So according to one study, some raters focus on length, and they have a quick glance. They see the number of lines, and then they make a decision about, they form some decision about the possible rate or mark they will allocate to this student. Some people focus on legibility and how beautiful the handwriting is, or even though it may not be explicitly part of the marking rubrics. Some people emphasize grammar, the type of grammar mistakes, and the frequency of these mistakes. Some people focus on the structure, whether it's sentence level or paragraph level or at the essay level. Some people do not focus on grammar or structure, but how clearly the message is conveyed to the reader. And some raters may say this is more important for communication. Some people will focus on the tone and whether the flow sounds natural or not. You see all these different aspects that different raters focus on. Some people focus on vocabulary, whether the vocabulary used is accurate and whether there's a variety of words used in the essay. Some people focus on spelling and whether the spelling is directed toward misspellings are in the difficult words or just, is everywhere. Some people focus on content, whether it's dull or lively or interesting or engaging. Some people focus on task realization and whether the student has met the requirements of the task or not overall. Some people focus on punctuation. You see, there's so many aspects. So it's kind of understandable if different raters have different evaluations. And the weight attributed to each element also varies widely among raters. So there are many complications when you mark a single essay in front of you. So what are some of the manifestations of rating biases? Some raters have a strictness bias, which means they tend to be too harsh when they mark. Some people have this tendency, they are grumpy and just, never give, high marks to anybody. It's just very reluctant to give high marks. And you, or maybe a teacher you had when you were a student, might have had this bias. It's easy to recognize in some teachers. On the other hand, some people have a leniency bias, meaning that it's the opposite. They just tend to be liberal when they mark essays overall. Some people have a central tendency bias, so they don't give very, very high marks. They don't give very, very low marks. They are overall in the middle, like 7 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10, 6 out of 10. Some people have a restriction of range bias. They say, okay, I can give high marks or low marks, but I never give the full mark. Nobody deserves the full mark. Some people have this attitude also. I'm sure that you can recognize some people now as you listen to me. Some people have the halo effect bias, which means if one dimension of the essay is very good, this tends to color other aspects of the essay. So, for example, if the student has very good grammar, some markers may tend to also give them or score them highly in structure and clarity, and etc., even though they may not be as high in these other dimensions. So this creates a halo kind of around this student. The horns effect bias, which is the opposite. Some student may have very poor grammar, and then somebody who has a horns effect bias may tend to lower that student, penalize that student in other dimensions as well, which is not fair. The contrast effect bias is when the tendency to compare the performance of different examinees. You have one class, for example, and so you say, oh, in this class, at least some students will be high, some students will be middle, some students will be low. You talk about the normal distribution, you talk about this. So you don't just evaluate the paper itself, but also in relation to other students. First impression bias, influenced by the beginning of the performance, like the introduction. If a student starts a very good introduction, then some people will tend to say, wow, this is a very good essay, even if towards the end, it's not that good. On the other hand, some people have the recency bias, which is the opposite. If the conclusion is very good, then tend to forget that the introduction was not so good, so you tend to give high marks. The cultural familiarity bias, so scoring individuals from familiar backgrounds differently, or the cultural unfamiliarity bias, scoring ones from unfamiliar backgrounds differently. So irrespective of the actual essay, you look at the student and their background or the topic under discussion, and then this will color your evaluation. Acquaintanceship bias is scoring candidates differently. So this student has been your student for the whole semester, for example, even maybe previous semesters, and you see that this student is struggling, but they are doing their best and they're trying to improve. So you have some sympathy on the student and give them some extra marks. But this is unfair to other students that you don't know personally, that you are also marking at the same session. So this is not fair. Similar to me bias, if somebody is similar to you, they have a narrative essay and explain a problem that you also had, then you tend to score them more favorably. Or the opposite, if it is very exotic and different, then you also tend to score them differently. Personal bias, some people will have some biases regarding to ethnicity or gender, class, age, social status, etc., etc. Again, regardless of the content of the essay itself. Sympathy bias. Okay, you see some student and they are, almost a D, and then you feel, have this sympathy, and then, give them extra marks. Or they may need a certain grade to graduate or to join a specific major, etc., etc. Current state of mind bias. You are marking in the morning and you have not had your coffee, then your marks are different. Or you are marking late and you have a deadline and you are stressed, and then this will also affect the reliability of your marking. So you see all these biases everywhere, about dimensions, about the person, about the essay, about the student, about this, about that. It's a very complex process. So this leads to cognitive load. When you have one essay, it could be one page, but there is a lot happening in your working memory as you mark this essay. And if you were to mark this essay, the same essay, say a week later or a month later, you may give it a different mark, again, based on all these biases and etc. You also have different criteria. You are reading the same essay and keeping in mind different criteria, keeping in mind grammar, keeping in mind structure, keeping in mind clarity, keeping in mind this and that, depending on whatever marking rubrics you are using. Again, all these also overload your working memory. You are multitasking also. You are not a full-time marker. Usually you have teaching, you may have admin tasks, you might have other different exams that you are marking. You have a life at the end of the day also. So all these factors also have an impact on the accuracy and the reliability of your marking. Also, if there is pressure from admin and if you are monitored, and if this monitoring process is going to affect you, may affect your annual evaluation, may affect your contract. So also this adds to pressure and make people mark their essays differently. Time pressure also, if you have a deadline, again, you need to speed up, so you tend to skip some steps. Fatigue, if you have a large number of students, then you get tired. You mark the first essay, the fifth essay, the 10th essay, you get tired, but you have a deadline, you continue and you continue, and it's late at night, and all this. This is part of real life that everybody has to go through. So, according to some researchers, rater training, so somebody might say, okay, let's train teachers so that they improve their marking. Rater training has been shown to be much less effective at reducing rater variability than expected, unfortunately. That is, raters typically maintain far from functioning interchangeably, even after extensive training sessions. How disappointing. And after individualized feedback on their ratings. It's very hard to change how somebody marks. It's very difficult. It's not about, one norming session just before the exam. You get the teachers in one room and give them a sample essay and say, okay, mark this paper. Let's compare the mark. Okay, everything sounds good. Any questions? Let's go. It's not as simple as that. It's a very complex process. Let's have an example. So there are two types of marking rubrics. So this is an example marking rubrics. Breakfast in bed, holistic rubric. The other type of rubric is the analytical rubric. We will see it in a bit. So now we're focusing on the holistic rubric. So breakfast in bed. So this is just an example. It looks weird, but imagine that this rating is directed towards patients in hospital, elderly people, for example, and they want to rate their satisfaction with the service in the hospital they are in, for example. So you have scores from 1 to 4, and you have description. So you mark it 4 if all food is perfectly cooked, presentation surpasses expectations, recipient is kept exceptionally comfortable throughout the meal. Very nice. 3 is food is cooked correctly, but not perfectly. It's cooked correctly, so it's okay. The meal is presented in a clean and well-organized manner, but doesn't surpass expectations. It's clean, it's okay, it's no problem. The recipient is kept comfortable throughout the meal, but not exceptionally comfortable. But still, it's okay. So 2 is kind of okay. 4 is exceptional. 2, some food is cooked properly. So now we have some problems here. Some aspects of presentation is sloppy or unclean. The recipient is uncomfortable at times. So this is not okay. There's some problems. And the worst score will be most of the food is cooked poorly, not some, most of the food. Presentation is sloppy or unclean, not just some aspects, it's just the overall is sloppy and unclean. The recipient is uncomfortable most of the time. So patients here, for example, they can rate from 1 to 4 based on their experience. So this is a simple example of a holistic rubric. Now, let's look at an analytic rubric. So this is an analytic rubric about the same thing here, but formatted differently using an analytic approach. So we have, again, from 1 to 4. Then we have food separately, presentation separately, and comfort separately. So if we go here, let's have an example. So this is food. This is presentation. And this is comfort, being comfortable. They are all in one category. But when it comes to the analytic rubric, they are separated because the food may be very good, presentation might be not so good, comfort might be, wherever, could be different. Here you are forced to pick from 1 to 4. So this gives you more details, allows you to zoom in on different aspects. But on the other hand, it can be time consuming. Here you just pick a number. That's it. You are finished. You go to the next paper. But for here, you may say here, for example, 4. Here you may say 3. Here you may say, for example, 1. And then you get the average. Then the average will be more accurate than here. You are limited to 4 numbers. Here you can have fractions, you can have etc. You can also give the student feedback if you pick, for example, I don't know, this one, for example. So the student will know, or whoever your stakeholder is, will know why you picked them to, for example, 2 or 3 for presentation and, for example, 4 for food, etc., etc. But of course, there is other debate about whether students actually look at your feedback and whether students actually benefit from this feedback when they look at it, etc., etc. There is a lot of debate about it. But anyway, there is the analytic rubric and there is the holistic rubric. Moving on, let's look at the TOEFL. How do TOEFL markers evaluate the writing element in the TOEFL exam? This is the official marking rubric for the TOEFL, and it is holistic from 0 to 5. So let's zoom in. So 5 would be a fully successful response. 4 is a generally successful response. You see, there is the same logic here. 3 is a partially successful response, and then it goes, it goes down and down and down. And if we go and look at the details, a typical response displays the following: relevant and well-elaborated explanations, exemplifications, details, effective use of a variety of syntactic structures, etc., etc., almost no lexical or grammatical errors, etc., etc. A generally successful response will be relevant and adequately elaborated explanations, but not well elaborated. It's adequately elaborated, so it's okay. A variety of syntactic structure, but not effective use of a variety of syntactic structure. You can see that subjectivity can come in here, so is it effective use? Different markers will have different opinions about different parts of the essay. It can get tricky here. Fewer non-lexical grammatical errors. Then let's see, partially successful elaboration in which part of an explanation example may be missing, unclear or relevant. Some variety in syntactic structures, some varieties, just not that much. Some noticeable lexical.
Dr. Ali, your mic is muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Was it muted for a long time or just?
No, just for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Let me continue. So IELTS, as you can see here, this is the IELTS, and it is an analytic rubric. And for the TOEFL, it was, 5 was the top mark. Here, 9 is the top mark. And 9, 8, 7, and then it goes to, 6, 5, etc., etc., etc. So we don't want to go to, the low marks. So it has task achievement separately from coherence and cohesion, and which is also separate from lexical resource, and finally grammatical range and accuracy. So let's have a quick look. I will read, just the first sentences to have a taste of how IELTS markers deal with the essays. The message can be followed effortlessly. The message can be followed with ease. It's kind of very similar, right? Information and ideas are logically organized, and there is a clear progression throughout the response. A few lapses may occur. So this is 7. Let's go to the next one. Information and ideas are generally arranged coherently, and there is a clear over progression. It's kind of, why is this, 6? It's kind of strange. Organization is evident, but not wholly logical, and there may be a lack of overall progression, etc., etc. So kind of 5, we start to see problems. Let's look at lexical resource. Full flexibility and precise use are evident within the scope of the task. Very great. A wide resource, not full, but wide. Okay, it's wide. And flexibility used to convey precise meaning within the scope of the task. The resource is sufficient. So it's not full, it's not wide, but sufficient to allow some flexibility and precision. Again, where do you draw the line here? It's kind of vaguey. The resource is generally adequate and appropriate for what is generally adequate. Different markers will, have different opinions. The resource is limited, but minimally adequate. So here again, 5, we start to have clearer problems than before. Finally, let's look at the grammar. A wide range of structures within the scope of the task is used with full flexibility and control. A wide range, but not full. A wide range of structures within the scope of the task is flexible and is flexibly and accurately used. A variety of complex structures is used with some flexibility, not wide. And then we have a mix of simple and complex sentences is used with flexibility, but flexibility is limited. Now we have more problems here with 6, kind of clearer problems with the grammar. And the range of structures is limited and rather repetitive. Okay, so this is the so now let's move to ChatGPT. You know, it's, as I said, I have tried to demonstrate in the first part of this talk how complex writing is, even if you have rubrics, even if you have training, even if you have international level rubrics like IELTS, like TOEFL, still, what does adequately mean? Does it apply to this sentence? Does it apply to this paragraph? Does it apply to this essay? Sometimes you have good introduction, poor body, excellent conclusion. You have this, you have that. It's very difficult. It's not easy. At the same time, as I also mentioned at the beginning, exams are very high stakes. So the fate of your students, is in these vague rubrics. So how does ChatGPT? Let's look at ChatGPT. So I inputted this prompt into ChatGPT. I asked GPT to write the following essay based on the 4 IELTS band descriptors out of 9 each. I didn't explain the band descriptors because ChatGPT already knows these descriptors, as I said in the previous slide: task response, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy. ChatGPT already knows these, band descriptors because it's an internationally recognized exam and these rubrics are available online. So I did not feed these to ChatGPT. Then I gave ChatGPT a sample essay to rate it. So what I'm going to do now in this part of the talk is that I will show you the essay and I will ask you to rate it out of 9. And then we will compare the mark that you gave it to the mark that ChatGPT gave it and see how close your marking is to ChatGPT. Okay, so we are going to compare ChatGPT with your ratings. This is a sample essay. So let's have a quick look before we start evaluation. In many countries, children are engaged in different kinds of paid work. Some people regard this as completely wrong, while others consider it a valuable work experience, important for learning and taking responsibility. What is your opinion? So this is a real essay from this website. This is a good website.
Dr. Ali, I apologize again, but your mic is again muted. I would like to remind our audience to stay muted until the end of the session, please.
Okay, sorry for this. Yes, so as I said, this is a sample essay from this website. This website has a lot of interesting essays, different levels, so it's a useful resource. And we will have a quick look at this essay now. And as you look at this essay, please try to give it a mark out of 9. based on the IELTS rubrics. So from 5 to 9, we are not going to go below 9. So from 5 to 9. Okay, so just let's have a look quickly. The issue of whether or not children should be engaged in some paid work has sparked a heated debate. While some argue that having some employment experience is conducive to a child's learning and development, I contend that it would bring harm to the child's health and learning. Okay, first of all, a workforce designed for adults is normally shortage of child-friendly facilities. Desks and chairs are too high for a child. The light switches are installed on the walls and reachable by children. Also, emergency training facilities such as phones are only provided to adults. Furthermore, various hazards such as polluted air and chemical fumes are still produced in factories and farms. Undoubtedly, young people would suffer in such workplaces. Also, children would find it frustrating when they are not properly inducted before starting a job. A child working in a cemetery factory would feel a setback when he could not get immediate support while struggling with the procedures of recording different raw materials that is required by the job. Further, without sufficient support, a child's misunderstanding or inappropriately communicating with adults would only disappoint him and prevents him from active learning and interacting with other people. To conclude, a child's paid employment experience would lead to a negative impact on their health and active learning. However, recognizing the importance of children's learning and their awareness of responsibility it is advisable to encourage them to be involved in some volunteering opportunities where they can meaningfully learn and interact with other people with sufficient care and support in place for such jobs. Okay, so I hope that you have formulated an idea of this student's essay, and you can pick a mark out of 9. So now, please, you can either scan this QR code or go to slido.com, very simple, and enter this code. You will have this survey in front of you immediately. You just pick a number from 5 to 9. If you could go now, please. I am waiting. Okay, we're seeing some 7s, more 7s, equal. Okay, 8 is leading. 8 is leading by 50%. Okay, 55%. We have more 7s. Okay. Where's everybody? Come on, everybody, we're waiting. No 9s, no 5s. Okay, more 7s. Still 8 is in the lead. Okay, we have 7s. 6, kind of. Okay, we have a 9. Okay, interesting. Okay, 7. Okay, still 7 is leading, followed by 8. 8 is kind of reaching there. Okay. So most people say it's 7, it's kind of. Some people say 8, more generous. Fewer people are saying 9, perfect score, and or 6, or even 5. We have some 5s here. So most people are saying 7. Okay, let's give it a few more seconds for other people to have a chance. Okay, so we have, the winner is 7 or 8. So it's kind of between 7 and 8. This is the majority of people, so kind of 50 and 30. So around 80% of the audience say it's kind of 7.5. Essay between 7, between 8, like this. Now, in the next slide, I'm going to show you what ChatGPT thought of this essay in order to compare your rating with ChatGPT's rating. So, task response, ChatGPT was not happy. It gave it 6. Interesting. Coherence and cohesion, again 6. Lexical resource, 5. That's and grammar is 6. So kind of strict, kind of, maybe. What do you think? It's kind of strict marking. So let's have a look. Why did ChatGPT get, this is the lowest. Let's see why it's 5. The vocabulary used in the essay is generally adequate, but there are instances of imprecise word choices and awkward phrasing. For example, it would bring harm to the child's health. It would harm the child's health. It's also repetitive words like child and learning. What else than learning? It's, a wide range of vocabulary and better word selection would enhance the essay. So ChatGPT was not very happy with this essay. Let's look at coherence and cohesion. The essay has a clear structure with an introduction, body paragraphs, and the conclusion. However, the ideas within the body paragraphs are somewhat disjointed. It lacks smooth transition between ideas, making it less coherent. Additionally, the essay could benefit from more varied sentence structures, linking them to improve overall cohesion. So, also for grammar, undoubtedly young people would suffer in such workplaces would be better phrase. Undoubtedly young people would face challenges in such workplaces, etc., etc. The child's heath. Okay, so there was a spelling mistake. Also, it quoted child's health. Okay, let's have another example. Okay, let's have a look at another essay. I'm going to ask you to do the same. I'm going to show you the essay. We will go through it briefly, and as we go through it, formulate an idea in your mind, what mark you are going to give it, and then we will do the same. We will see what ChatGPT says about that essay. So this is the second essay. Having a salaried job is better than being self-employed. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? If one wants to work for money, there are usually 2 options: working for someone else for a salary and being self-employed. Most people are involved in these 2 options, and they have both advantages and disadvantages. Okay. Being self-employed means the worker owns the business that is being done. This might be a small one-person business or a large company with hundreds of employees. The first advantage of this is the capacity to earn more money. If the business does very well, the income will be considerable and the owner of the company will receive the benefits. On the other hand, if the business is not good, the owner's income will be low. Self-employed people also have the benefit to some extent of choosing their working hours and holidays, and they will have the right to change anything within their business. With this autonomy, however, comes the pressure to succeed and the reliance on one's employees, if there are any, to do their best to make the business thrive. Salaried workers do not experience the same stress as self-employed owners of companies. They might have stress in their duties, but the pressure that comes with keeping one's own business operating successfully in order to support oneself and one's family is just not felt by an employee. The employee also has a certain knowledge of his or her income, and the salary is usually fixed every month. The employee's owner's income also often depends on how successful the business is. The employee's fixed income, however, does not give much scope for earning large amounts more. In addition, an employee does not have the freedoms of the owner or the autonomy, and for many people, having control over their lives is a significant factor for their well-being. It is certain that there are advantages and disadvantages for both being self-employed and salaries. I personally disagree that being salaried is better than being self-employed. I prefer autonomy about being self-employed, that being self-employed brings, and although there is more risk and pressure, this can lead to greater and more fulfilling rewards. So again, please go again to Slido and input this code. Oops. Input this code and start marking. Okay, so we have 70% 8. Interesting. Okay, still 8 is leading. 7 is trying to catch up. No 9s, no 6 this time. Okay, we have a 6. So still 8 is leading. So I'm kind of 80% of people again say between 6 and 7. I can see range restriction here. I'm not sure if I'm just imagining things, but again, it's kind of, 7 and 8 are flipped, but it's still within this range, just like the previous essay. Okay, we still have more people. Okay, still 8 is leading. We have more 6s and more 5s. Okay, we have a 9. Interesting. We have even 9. Okay, so clearly 8 is the winner here, followed by 7. And suddenly we have 5. So 6 is kind of lost. There is no gradation apparently, but so, okay. So again, like around 80% say, almost 80% say it's between 7 and 8, kind of 7.5, leaning toward 8. Now, let's look at what ChatGPT says and compare to it. Interesting. Task response is 8. Interesting. Very good. Coherence and cohesion, 7 out of 9. Lexical resource, 7 out of 9. And grammar and range, 8 out of 9. Interesting. So this time it's closer. Interesting. So there is some disagreement. There are some agreements. Okay. So let's read one example here. I will pick something randomly. Lexical resource. The vocabulary used in this essay is appropriate and demonstrates a good range of vocabulary related to the topic. The essay effectively conveys the ideas and arguments. There are some instances of repetition, such as income and autonomy, which could be replaced with synonyms for better variety. Okay. Task response is 8. So the essay provides a clear response to the prompt by discussing the advantages and disadvantages of being self-employed and having a salaried job. The candidate takes a clear stance in disagreement with the statement and supports their opinion with well-explained arguments. However, a counter-argument or acknowledgement of the opposing viewpoint could have added balance to the essay. Okay, so it gave you some feedback about what to do to improve the for the student to improve their essay if you want to give the student feedback. Okay, third and last essay. So this is the last essay example here. Let's look at it and we will do the same. In some countries, private cars are now banned from city centers. What are the advantages and disadvantages of such a system? Do you feel that this is something that most cities should adopt? Okay, let's look at the essay. Banning cars from city centers is a recent trend, and it can be seen in various cities around the world. Certain advantages and disadvantages immediately spring to mind when considering this step that city councils are taking. The advantages are clear. Since cars were introduced, city centers have always been areas where air quality is poor due to the amount of emissions, which in turn affects people's health. City centers become quieter and safer for people to wander around, shopping and enjoying themselves. Access to city centers can still be good, as it is usually only private vehicles that are banned, and buses and taxis can still take people in and out of the city center areas. Many towns also operate a park and ride scheme, so people can leave their cars in a safe car park in the outskirts of town and travel to a dedicated bus service to the town centers. It would seem hard to criticize this kind of scheme. There are critics, though, to the scheme of banning cars in city centers. City center shopkeepers have often been vocal opponents, as they believe that fewer people will come to the city centers, and therefore their income will be affected. The general public also sometimes object, as people often like to travel in their own private vehicles. In actual fact, banning cars from city centers has in practice not reduced the number of people who travel to city centers to shop. People like shopping and socializing in city centers, and they just adapt to the situation. There is no answer to people who want to drive their own cars. They hopefully will just realize that the sacrifice of not driving their own cars is outweighed by the health and lifestyle improvements of a cleaner, quieter city center. In conclusion, there are far more advantages to banning cars from city centers than allowing them. It is therefore a measure that most city centers should adopt for their citizens. Okay, let's go now. Oh, we have a 5. Interesting. Okay, 9. Okay, 9. Interesting. Okay, 8 is catching up. 6. Okay. Okay, so 9 is clear winner so far. Kind of, it's odd that there are 6 here and there are 9s. It's kind of interesting. Yeah. And no 7s, hardly any 7s. Let's wait a few more seconds for people to finish. Okay, so almost 40%. I was going to say half, but at the last minute we have 7s. It's kind of, even almost double the amount is saying 9. Okay, so it seems that the final outcome is between 8 and 9, so leaning toward 9. And this is indeed, in theory, this is a band 9 essay, according to the website that I took it from. So let's look at what ChatGPT and what ChatGPT says and whether it agrees with your rating and the rating of the original website itself, where I took this essay from. It wasn't very happy, apparently. I was surprised. The task response is 7 out of 9. Interesting. Coherence and cohesion. I thought, it was a good essay. Lexical resource. I thought it was good vocabulary. Kind of surprising. Grammar. Why is grammar? The essay demonstrates a strong command of grammar. Okay, sentence structures are varied and there are only minor grammatical errors. For instance, it can be seen Various cities around the world is well structured. People often travel to their own parks and correct the essay. Well, it doesn't give any examples of problems. You know, that's interesting. Lexical resource. The vocabulary used in the essay is appropriate and varied. It effectively conveys the ideas and arguments. The essay uses a range of vocabulary related to the topic. However, there are a few instances where word choice can be improved for clarity. For example, certain advantages, disadvantages, media spring to mind and expressed more precisely. It doesn't say how more precisely, just, you know. Okay, so apparently ChatGPT was strict here. I'm not sure why, but it is what it is. This is ChatGPT, and that's its opinions. Its opinion. So, can we use ChatGPT to evaluate essay? Of course, you know, ChatGPT evaluation does vary slightly if you regenerate the rating, the response. It doesn't always give you exactly the same mark. Sometimes it gives you 7 out of 9, and if you regenerate it, it may change its mind and say 6 or 8. This does happen, you know. The variation is not that great, but does exist. Explanations are sometimes unclear or even not relevant. Sometimes it says something, but that's not coherence, that's something else. Also, you have these instances. Now, but it does, at the end of the day, help markers reflect, because marking is usually an individual activity. You do it, and usually it's one person marking the paper, but when you look at the response of ChatGPT, it helps you reflect. It might help you improve, refine your ideas. It might catch things that you didn't catch yourself. It can help give feedback to students, for example. You generate feedback, then you read it and check it, see whether it's accurate or not, of course, before sharing it with students. Also, students themselves can use ChatGPT to evaluate their essays when they practice, thus lowering the load on teachers. You know, they can input their essays into ChatGPT. ChatGPT will evaluate it. Then they can go back and forth. So if I go back now one slide, here it says the essay uses, for example, could be expressed more precisely, but it doesn't say how can I express it more precisely. You can write a response and say, explain how it could be more precise, and engage in a conversation with ChatGPT and ask for clarifications. And at the end of the day, you may be convinced by what ChatGPT says, and you may not be convinced. It's up to you as the teacher. Thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope that it was interesting and useful. And if there are any questions, I will be happy to listen to them and hopefully try to address them.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ali, for this informative session. We really enjoyed everything that you mentioned, especially the different variabilities. I was evaluating myself while you were talking about the different variables, the leniency, the tendency, the multitasking, and I'm pretty sure that all of us agree that we usually get overwhelmed by all the tasks that we try to multitask at the same time, and usually it affects the way we grade our assignments and tasks. So, Dr. Ali, now it's time to read the questions. So, if we have questions, please write them in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and go ahead. So if you have questions, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself.
I'm sure you have a million questions. Come on, ask your questions.
So, Dr. Ali, I actually have a question. I really enjoyed the website, or it's the application Slido. I think I'm gonna start using that with my online presentations. Is it free, or is there like a paid subscription that we have to get?
It's completely free. You install it. It's an app that you download and install and integrate it with. I'm sure it's kind of, is it in home, I think, or something? Yes, it's here. You integrate it here, and you just, with a few clicks, you can create the slides. It's very convenient.
Yes, thank you so much. I loved how interactive it is, and it makes the session very enjoyable. So we have a question with Angel. You can just unmute yourself and go ahead, please.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
My question is about since ChatGPT is not necessarily freely available here, and my students may not have access to it for a variety of reasons, I've been experimenting with using Bard. I know I could use Bing AI with them. It's powered by GPT-4, but that's a little harder to get them set up with. So I've been experimenting with using Bard. Have you done anything with Google Bard? Do you have any feedback on that, on how we could be using it?
I'm rather surprised. Why is ChatGPT not accessible? Because the 3.5 version is available for free in Saudi Arabia now.
Yes. It's sometimes a little difficult for my students to understand the feedback they get if they're lower level.
Okay.
I've done some experimenting with all three for about, I've been using all three for about a year now. And it seemed that when I tried using Bard in the classroom, just for some simple things, the students were able to kind of figure out how to use it right away, as opposed to some had already used GPT, but didn't always understand the feedback they were getting.
Interesting. I haven't checked it out, so maybe for a future session, I could, feed in different essays and compare the output from different AI tools. But yeah, if they enjoy Bard, then Bard it is. Thank you for giving me this information. I'll check it out and see if it's for advanced learners might also be useful.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, keep hearing that Bard is very popular here. I believe that it's because of the restriction time that was when ChatGPT was not allowed. So people try to find alternatives, and we hear the names of Poe, P-O-E. I myself love using that, and we keep hearing more faculty members and students using Bard. So, but I believe that there's no realization that ChatGPT is now accessible as the others.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. Do we have another question? Yes, Amal, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for informative presentation. I would like to ask, we see with together that the ChatGPT assists the writing, but there is a way to see improvement writing. After the assessment?
Yes, ChatGPT, using ChatGPT and other tools, most of the time is limited only by your imagination. If you ask it to rate it, just give you a score, it will give you a score. If you want it to give you feedback, it will give you feedback. If you want to proofread, it will do the proofreading for you. If you want it to improve certain parts of it, it will improve certain parts of it. So AI tools are very flexible and depend on what you need from them. So different students at different levels may have different needs, for example. So, and this is the role of the teacher if they are using AI tools to guide students about the most sensible and appropriate use in order to improve their writing proficiency and to achieve the goals of the course they are taking.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question, Asma. We have another question from Reem. Dr. Reem, can you please unmute yourself?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Doctor, for all your efforts. I enjoyed it really very much. I just have a simple question. If we used it with students and they rated their essay, and then they took into consideration all the tips that it gave them, and they they changed it, and then they asked for rating it again. Was it tried, like when students take into notice everything and then they rate it again? Do they take a 9 or a full mark, or does it come to discover other things? Like you told us that if we rate it and then we re-rate it again, sometimes it may go from 7 to 6.
It does improve your mark, but as I said, the problem with ChatGPT is that it changes its mind if you regenerate.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking about.
Yeah, so it may give you a 9, but if you regenerate, it may change its mind and give you an 8. So it's better not to pay too much attention to the mark that the ChatGPT gives, but the feedback that you can get from it and whether you can use it and improve your writing. Because the purpose of writing this essay is to be able to write other essays on other topics. You are more interested in the skill that you will gain than in the mark on this particular essay.
No, Doctor, what I mean is sometimes like when I see my students like give me a presentation or something, I give them all the tips and I have the grades. But if I have like more smarter students and they try to do all the details, I become more speculative and I look for little details just to make them perfection. So that's what I'm asking, if it gives you like a overview, and then when you give them more detailed things, it goes into marking more details. I'm not talking about the grades, I'm talking about the trying to be perfection.
Yeah, I haven't tried it myself, but I would imagine that it will give you feedback depending on the prompt that you give it. If you say improve this essay, it will always find ways that you can improve.
To improve it, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
so I would imagine that it would depend on the prompt and how you formulate it.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a question from Shada. Please go ahead.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you so much for this informative workshop. I'm just asking about the recording. Will it be available to download?
Yes, inshallah. It will be sent to all those who registered in the meeting. It will be shared, inshallah, later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shada. Do you have another question? It's really interesting, Dr. Ali, to see how human evaluation can be more forgiving compared to ChatGPT's. I thought, for some reason, I assumed it's going to be the opposite. But with the exercise that you shared with us, it shows the opposite, which is very interesting. I saw a hand. I'm not sure if someone had a question.
Yes, I want to ask. I am not a specialist in law from College of Law, so I ask about if I don't use the essay, but I use it as a case study. If ChatGPT is already suitable for this case study or just for essay like this homework for homework for a student and like this.
This is an interesting question. I can't tell you much about essay writing, but if I go back here, this is the prompt that I entered to ChatGPT, and I specifically gave it the information that I need, the 4 IELTS band descriptors out of 9. So if I didn't give it this exact prompt and I just told it to evaluate or give me feedback, it will give me something less structured. So for other specialties like law or other majors, it depends on whether you are able to evaluate, to write a prompt, an exact prompt that gives you exactly what you need, depending on whatever you are studying there. So if you can do it, ChatGPT will be very effective. And you can look up something called prompt engineering. This is the whole field about how to communicate effectively with AI tools. So if you look up, prompt engineering online, it will give you all sorts of tips that, if the more information you give ChatGPT, the more exact the response will be.
Yes, it depends on what I feed it.
Yes.
As you said.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hanan. We have a question from Arij Al-Aufi.
So my question is really related to the last one. You said about you talked about the prompt that you used, and I assume that ChatGPT knows about the IELTS criteria. If we feed the ChatGPT or the AI our rubrics, our specific rubrics related to our field, would that be like an issue, or the results will be related to this specific rubrics? Have you tried that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. If you have an in-house rubric that you are following for a specific course, you can input this rubric to ChatGPT also. You can say, for example, I can, if I go to this slide, this example, for example, I can feed in this descriptions, whether it's analytic or holistic, it will recognize these descriptions and will do the task for you. Now, you can do it, and then this will help you as a rater improve your rating. It will, maybe suggest things that you didn't pay attention to. So it will help you improve also. So again, it depends on the information you feed it. If it is publicly available online, then you can refer to it like TOEFL or IELTS, or you give it more information.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ali. I hope this answers your question, Dr. Arij. We have a question now from Hanouf.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. It's very informative. I loved how you gave us the task of rating the writing, so we can see how different it is. And I'm happy that we didn't agree on the same rate with ChatGPT that tells us that our jobs is safe for now. Dr. Ali, I have just a small comment and a question. Would you use it for rating your students' assessment, seeing how different it is? Or would you use it as an aid to help you and guide you?
It's definitely an aid. It is specifically useful if for ambiguous cases. If you are not sure this case, is it, is this the 7 or is it an 8? You are less confident. In normal circumstances, you will go to a colleague and ask them to give an opinion, but you don't always have this colleague around. So ChatGPT is convenient. If the essay is available electronically, you just copy paste it and give it, what type of rubrics you are using, and it will give you an opinion. If the opinion matches the opinion that you have, then you have more confidence. And you can ask it why, whether it matches your opinion or not. And you go with engage in a conversation with it and question it. And no, I don't agree with you about this part. What about that part, etc. So yes, it's definitely an aid, but as you said, for now, it's not going to replace teachers. I don't know, maybe in the foreseeable future.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. Happy to have you.
Thank you.
We have one more question from Dr. Abir.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Ali, for this great session. I would like to ask a question. I'm not an English teacher, nor did I major in English, so excuse my English fluency if it's not that level. However, I attend this session to learn about how to use technology, AI technology, for educational purpose, and how it could assist the work of professors and teachers. You have mentioned that as far as evaluating essays, it could help the student to improve their essay, or you can give them part of the essay and ask the AI to improve it. My question is, as a teacher, how I can distinguish between the original work from the student and the work that can be assist with AI. This could raise an ethical issue, and I know maybe it's hard to solve such a problem, but I would like to know, as a teacher, how I can assure that the student submit the original work, or at least how I can elevate such a problem. You could answer this question, and thank you so much.
Dr. Abir, what is your major?
Instructional technology.
So you teach what type of tasks you ask students to do, if it is not writing essays? It's just so that I can understand your.
No, they could submit essays, but mostly it's project-based assignments, they design training or design instructional materials with the use of technology, kind of.
Okay, so technically speaking, in the real world, even if you write a research article to submit to a journal, you can use ChatGPT to fix your language problems. And you don't even need to declare that you use ChatGPT to proofread your paper. It's like saying, I used Microsoft spell check to fix my misspellings for you. Nobody says this, or Grammarly, or even Word. Microsoft now can suggest wordings for you. So in the real world, fixing the superficial language level is not a problem. But this depends on the purpose of the course. If the purpose of the course is to improve students' writing, in a supervised setting without using AI, then this is their chance to improve their writing using ChatGPT in preparation for the final task, for example. Otherwise, basically you can't, or at least it's very difficult for a student who is above average with some experience in using ChatGPT. It's very hard to detect that a piece of work was written by ChatGPT or not. And because you can actually, again, depending on the prompt that you give it to ChatGPT, you can simply say to ChatGPT, write an essay in 200 words about the following topic, make some mistakes as if you are a language learner. And it will give you an essay with some mistakes. You can say, okay, make the mistakes so few that I will get an A, not an A+, for example, so that the teacher won't notice. It will give you this essay in a second. So there are also, it's a kind of worms now. It's very difficult to deal with. And I would imagine more and more institutions will resort to invigilation and exams to handle these issues in the short term. In the very long term, maybe I would imagine that institutions will give up and say, okay, use what you want to use, and you are accountable for what you produce. And perhaps they will start teaching students prompt engineering so that they can produce higher quality essays using this. Because at some point, I imagine, people will start saying, why should we write first drafts? If you can, with one click, get 5 or 6 pages, just like this, why should be writers and not editors? It's more convenient, it's more practical. Imagine, stakeholders, people who employ your students in the future, they don't really care that much whether, the report they wrote was written by themselves from scratch, or was it generated by ChatGPT and then they, made some editing to it here and there, and the content at the end of the day is accurate. If anything, they may prefer the second option because it is faster and more efficient. And maybe employees who don't have this skill may lose their jobs and can't compete with people with AI skills. So I would imagine that in the future, institutions will give in and start incorporating AI tools as part of the curriculum. But I could be wrong.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Adil, for your question. We're happy to see everyone from different fields. We have IAC medicine, we see law, administration. So although this is specified or targeted for English majors, but we're all happy to welcome those who are joining us from different fields. I know the time is already past the scheduled time, but we'll take one more question since we started late. We have a question from Savaro, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, good evening. Your pronunciation is okay, it's fine. I'm Dr. Savat from Nursing College. I know that these rubrics and the examples that you shared, they were mainly focusing on, as you said, in the English language. Though it was really beneficial, and I would like to congratulate Dr. Ali for this sharing and the way of presentation, which was really interesting and amazing, very interactive. I would like to say, if it is possible to, because he said that we can find these rubrics and they are available. Is there anything that, according to his knowledge, that can be shared applicable to the healthcare sciences?
What specifically?
Regarding the forms of assess, the rubrics that we may be able to implement in the healthcare sciences, because we don't have that much essays in our exam.
So what type of questions do you have if you don't have essays?
Usually the exam for the health sciences are focusing on MCQs, matching, short answers, true, false. But we have assignments, written assignments and written projects. So we could maybe use them in the written assignments and projects.
Yes, so other questions like MCQs and multiple choice.
These are for the exam, but in the assignments, we can use them in the written assignment.
Yes, in the written assignment, they can use it. So as I said previously, you can, in the real world, you can use these AI tools to improve your language, but at the end of the day, the content itself that any AI tool provides may not be accurate. So in the future, I would imagine that people, when they use ChatGPT, they will use it and other AI tools. They will need to be trained to critically evaluate the content provided by these AI tools. Critical thinking will become, ever more important. It's already one of the 21st century skills, and it will be more and more important, especially with these tools. So yeah, I mean, you can, as a teacher, ask them to use AI tools, but help them to critique the content and evaluate which part of the AI response is accurate and which part is not. And then they can also get, into conversation with AI about parts that do not seem accurate.
Okay, thank you very much for your clarification. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Okay, this concludes our session for today. So thank you, Dr. Ali. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today and allocating some time to attend. Thank you, Dr. Ali, for this enjoyable session. We learned so much from you, and we look forward to having you with us again, inshallah, in the near future. I know we closed the section for the comments and the questions. I would like to thank you for your lovely questions. Dr. Ali, if you can just go to the slide where you have your contact information, please. If you have further questions or comments, you can contact Dr. Ali on the contact information displayed on the screen. Thank you so much. I'll stop here. Stawdatkumullah. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again.